Welcome back to the Art of Hobbiness. I'm Erin. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Tam.
Yes!
Today we're excited to chat with Caitlan, an internal family systems therapist and host from the podcast Return. Caitlan blends human design and IFS therapy to help people ditch the hustle and build businesses that feel authentic and true to who they are. We'll dive into how human design relates to parenting, self-care, and of course, the hobbies that light her up, like reading, yoga, painting, pottery, and traveling.
Ooh.
Welcome, Caitlan.
Hi, Caitlan.
Hi.
So go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about what human design is, because that's your big platform is human design.
Yeah. So human design, and I came to human design in a very non-traditional way anyways. I'm a licensed therapist, first and foremost.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
But human design, okay. Human design is like if astrology and quantum energetics and the chakra system and Kabbalah and all of these ancient practices all had a baby, and then they put it on a piece of paper. That is the foundation of human design.
Okay.
But what I like to think about is it really helps us understand how to use our energy the best in the world and how we were designed to do that. And it helps us understand ourselves better. So for your listeners, it's like, wow, they could really tap into the energetics of who they are, busy moms, and use that to embrace their creative practices, embrace their hobbies, and do that without feeling that guilt or that shame or I was listening to one of your episodes about it being perfect, that
Yes.
perfectionism piece. So human design really gives us this map, this energetic blueprint about hey, Tam, Erin, this is how you are uniquely designed to show up in the world. This is just really empowering information to have. And I imagine a lot of your listeners are moms. Now you get to know about the unique blueprint of your kiddo too. And how they are uniquely designed. What are their gifts according to human design? What is their energy? Listen, knowing my kiddo's energy has been a game changer for even naps or fighting those different battles that we can fight as moms. So I feel like human design just gives us, kind of guide, IKEA instructions, sort of, but less step by step,
Less missing pieces.
That's so interesting. That is not. I didn't know anything about that. So thank you for sharing that.
I did it, and I think it was interesting how you kind of hit on that parenting piece where it's it's not even just finding that human design of yourself, but also your child. So you've got two kids. Do you remember when you first had your first kid and you finally figured it out? Okay. And then you go to have your second kid and you're like, oh, well, my first kid, when they cried, they just wanted a diaper change. But then you change the diaper of the second kid and the second kid's like, no, that's not.
Yeah. I'm sure we've all experienced that. They're totally just born with certain, like what you're saying, different energy levels and personalities, and they need different things. And the way you talk to them even or discipline them is two different things a lot of times. So,
So finding that human design seems
I could see how that would be
key.
very applicable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you incorporate this with your therapy, with your patients, and then you also work with people to help create businesses.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So I've been in the middle of a journey, a pivot myself after I had my son. I got really into human design. Well, I've been learning about it as a hobby since 2017.
Love that.
But I've started to put it into more practice in the last couple of years. And so I use it with clients, both therapeutically, because it helps us understand where have we taken on conditioning in the world, right? Or where have we made meaning about ourselves when it's oh, this is your unique design actually, and you are designed in this way. And then when clients hear that, it's wait a second, where did I learn this then if that's not innately who I am? And so it's super helpful. It's having a map for my clients too. And the type of therapy I do is internal family systems. So IFS, parts work or inner child. You might have heard some of those terms. They're very much out there on the internet these days. And so by combining those two things together, both in a therapeutic sense, but also with moms, entrepreneurs, then it's like, wow, we can use this mindset piece with this like blueprint information about you to be more in tune with how you energetically are meant to show up in the world, which obviously impacts your business, your relationships, your personal life, your hobbies, your creative pursuits.
Yeah, I can imagine that could be so powerful. Like, just, I think what you're talking really hit home with me with this idea that we're influenced by so many things externally. And then to like really dig in deep to find your authentic self. Like, that is got to be so challenging, but rewarding once that you finally break through that.
Oh, yeah.
I would love, would you mind sharing with us maybe anything you've discovered about yourself and your parenting style with your kids, like through this process, just as an example?
I would love to, honestly, because I want all moms to know about this, even if it doesn't resonate. It's like, it is just an extra piece of information we can all have to help us along this wild ride of motherhood.
Absolutely.
So, I'm a projector in human design. That's my energy type. And that's about 20% of the population. And like the biggest thing I learned about being a projector as I was studying it is that I don't generate my own energy. And I'm like meant to guide people. That's kind of the role of the projector. So I need to rest more than the average person. So as a mom, I'm pretty sensitive, like to caffeine, to different energies, all of those things, because I can use my projector energy to like see deeply into people. That's part of my gift. So understanding that was really important. So when I had my son and I learned his energy type, so he's a generator in human design. It's the most common energy type. And generators are like just these little rays of sunshine that generate their own energy. And their purpose is to really just be these joyful beings for us and kind of do the doing, do the action. I often describe human design as like a sports team. They're the people, I used to play soccer. So they're the people like running up and down the field, you know, the forwards, like doing all of the doing, and the projector would be like the coach. So how human design has influenced my parenting style is realizing that while I might be overstimulated or really sensitive to an environment, that doesn't mean that my son is. In fact, this kid loves a crowded Target, is waving at everybody. Where I, as a child, might have needed maybe not to be in that environment, or I might have needed like a little bit more quiet time when I got home. He is energized by that. And I know that because he's a generator and he generates his own energy. So that has helped me as his mom just understand that his needs are so different maybe from my own needs, like as an adult.
Yeah.
And trying to find the balance of that has been super helpful. And even knowing like today, he actually is taking his nap way earlier because he ran out of energy, but just knowing and trusting like, oh, he's going to fill it back up. And like, that's what he needed versus being so attached to what I might think, what the internet says, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. So it reminds me a little bit of like personality test typing kind of along those parallels, right? I was going to
ask, you've identified 2. Are there more categories?
Yes, there are 5 total energy types. And so generators are the most common. They're about 35% of the population. Wow. And then there's the next most common type is called manifesting generator. And these are the people that, like, in terms of hobbies, they are gonna, one day they're into watercolor and the next day they're like into the trampoline class and the next day, and they're just here to try all of these different things and to be multi-passionate.
Dabblers. Hobby dabblers. Dabblers. I don't know. There's people that dabble.
Yeah, exactly. Like dabblers, but to show us that that's okay. And they also generate their own energy. So they have a lot of energy. So the other cool thing that I think about human design is like, that means that 70% of the population generates their own energy and 30% doesn't. So collectively, we live in a society like designed for people who do generate their own energy, which is great. We need that. But when we think about like rest and creativity, what if you're in the other 30%?
Yeah.
And what if you have a part of you that feels like you need to keep up with that 70%? And then how does that impact your creativity and your hobbies and your time? And so getting more information could be really helpful. Okay, so those are the two like energetic types. I talked a little bit about projectors, which is my type. That's about 20%. Again, those are the guides. And if you think about it, if we're all doing our roles, this is what I like to think too, then together we're functioning in like an amazing team way. I get when a generator is doing things they enjoy and is really lit up, I get a lot of energy from that.
Wow.
I don't generate my own. So then it's like, this is great. I'm getting that. He's getting seen by me as a projector and his mom. So we can all kind of work together in harmony. Okay, the last two types. Manifestor, that's about 7% of the population. If you have a manifestor child, you will know it. These are the initiators. So these are the people that are like, this is where we're going. Come or don't come. I don't care. I'm doing this. My husband and partner is a manifestor. And these kiddos really push up against authority because they already feel so like powerful and independent from a very young age. And so knowing that about your child and like that they're only 7%, 7 to 9, different sources say different things of the population, like how powerful is that? And then you can get out of that loop of like, oh my gosh, we're battling every single day, and you can learn how to help them assert their independence and that need for that. And then 1% of the population is a reflector, and they're here to reflect how we're doing as a society. So they have a very unique chart. They are very, very sensitive beings because they need to be able to reflect everything back. And they're only 1%. So they're kind of very unique in that sense, and if that's your kiddo, they might feel a little bit like out of place or unsure. And I think it's really helpful to just have that information and know that. And they're like, if we go back to the sports analogy, reflectors are like the fans in the stands, like telling us how we're doing. If the team is winning, they're clapping. If we're not, they're quiet. And that's really their role within the system. So I hope I landed that.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And that's a good analogy. I love your analogy.
No, it was really good because actually when I was listening to it, the first thing that came to my head when you were talking about specifically like the generators and like their strength and their numbers, burnout. Like what does burnout look like for both categories, and can they burn each other out?
Yes. Yes. And this is why, like, knowing all of this about your partners, about your friends, about yourself, about your kids can be so helpful, because it's like, oh, when I'm in this person's energy, that influences me. Like my son influences me. I say yes to a bunch of things, and then I'm like,
and then you're
exhausted. I felt the energy. And then I'm like, oh no, actually I don't have it.
Yeah. That's so, I could totally see how that would happen to somebody, a generator. Yeah. Or I mean,
projector.
Projector. Yes. Sorry.
But so to answer your question, yes, like, generators can still, and manifesting generators can still burn out, because if they're doing something that doesn't light them up, or they're like really in a job they hate, or they aren't doing hobbies that bring them joy, then they're also going to burn out. Like I like to think of it as they're fueling themselves with like junk food instead of like a clean fuel. So if they're doing joyful hobbies, then they're like eating really nourishing and clean. Obviously,
no, I love the analogy. Keep going with it.
Yeah, they want to keep going. They're really engaged in it, I can imagine.
Yeah. And that's so important to them. Like, they don't have to be in a career that they absolutely love that brings them joy every day. In fact, I think we could argue that it's like hard to find that. Work is work most of the time, but that's where knowing that and tapping into those hobbies can be so great. And then vice versa, like, anyone who doesn't have that defined energy, so projectors, reflectors, and manifestors, they can burn out when they're trying to keep up with.
Yeah, that seems most logical.
The energy of that. And so that's where, like, knowing, what rest looks like, what creative pursuits, what hobbies give more rest. Like yoga would be an amazing hobby for a projector.
Yeah, I guess looking at your hobbies, I mean, now that I know that about you, it seems like you've chosen a lot of hobbies that are more or like single, like by yourself and quiet,
in line with
and
that.
Calming. Is that intentional? I'm assuming. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, right? Now that we're sitting down looking at this, yes. But isn't that interesting that like I uniquely came to that without incorporating human design? And like, wow, if you could have given 25-year-old Caitlan her human design and helped me back then when I was like super burnt out in a corporate role, and realizing that like I could have had all of these hobbies in place. Like I kind of stumbled and bumbled into them over time as I got more curious about like what did I like as a child. But yeah, there's so much amazingness, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm really intrigued by all this. And I guess just to share for our listeners, the hobbies you shared with us that you are yours, just so they know what we're talking about, is you listed reading, yoga, traveling, which that could be mixed, and then watercolor painting and pottery. So a lot of,
Do you feel like, so you kind of said that you kind of stumbled into the hobbies before you found human design, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do you feel that hobbies kind of led you to maybe discovering the human design? Do you feel like getting to those that really spoke to you, those hobbies that spoke to who you really are, got you to explore more that route?
I think so.
Yeah. You said human design or like learning about it started as a hobby, right? So
totally. Like similar to previous guests that you've had on, like I was just like curious about it and just like dabbling. I heard it on a podcast in 2017, and at first I was so confused. I was like, what is this thing? I don't even understand. Like it takes a little while for it to sink in, but as I started to learn about it, I was like, whoa, this is making a lot of sense. As a projector, I always felt like I was lazy or like something around that. I had a lot of conditioning there.
And I'm sure I felt some guilt. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I leaned more into hobbies that helped me kind of return to myself and my own energy, that is what continued to spark this like, maybe there is something to this. And so I think for folks listening and your listeners, like that can be a really interesting pairing of knowing your human design and then finding some hobbies that correspond to that to really rejuvenate you and make sure that you're, not heading more towards burnout.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that we talk quite, not using human design, but we've talked before about choosing hobbies, whether you're or for more introverted or extroverted people or things like that. So, definitely have touched on that, but I love this idea. I'm going to read about it more, learn more about it.
I was just saying, I'm going to like skim your website.
One question that came to mind was, do you feel, or have you come across, like, can your, do you call it like your design, or can your human design change as you
that's a great question.
Oh my gosh, beautiful question. Yeah. So it's a blueprint of who you are. It never changes. So you have this chart that is like a floating human head. They call it a body graph. Okay. And there's all these crazy like triangles and squares. They represent the chakra system, if you're familiar with that. And then it is always the same. So it's like a snapshot, a blueprint, a map of who you are. And it doesn't change. Like similar to your astrology chart, like there are transits and stuff, but that like pie thing on the astrology chart, that is, boom, that's it. It's the same for human design. So whatever energy types the two of you are, you're always going to be that.
But you could potentially, do you see people like, I would imagine faking it kind of, or, posing as because of their conditioning? I don't know. You see that a lot?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
I was doing that. I was I worked in the corporate world before I went back to school and got my master's in psychology and therapy. And I was trying to keep up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hustle. I'm going to work these days. It felt horrible in my body. My body was like screaming at me. And so, we are out of alignment. Like human design uses these kind of terms that you're like misaligned or in alignment, and each energy type has a way to tell that, which I also think is really cool. Like kind of to show you, are you on track? Are you off track? Are you kind of moving in and out of alignment? So yes, I think without awareness, we just will adapt to what we see and what we know and how we've been raised. And so getting this awareness can help us be like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Okay, so say you're somebody who's like, wait, what if I'm that poser? What if I'm that person that's like trying to be something I'm not? What is like a first step that you can advise like our listeners to do to kind of determine, one, if they're the poser, and two, like how to get out of that?
Yeah, such a beautiful question. First of all, I would say, like, please don't be hard on yourself. Like, be really compassionate. There's the therapist part of me. Like, be very compassionate with the fact that that happened. Like, of course it did, you know, that's okay. And what people would do is you need to pull up your chart, right? And you can go to Jovian Archive to do that. I can send you these links.
Great,
or
thank you.
My Human Design, and you'll get your chart, that little blueprint, and then you want to look at what your energy type is. So are you a projector, manifestor, reflector? And then it will say something like strategy. It's different things, but the idea is strategy. That's going to tell you kind of what you can do to get into alignment and what you can do to kind of get to that place. And then there's also a piece that's different for everyone, but it shows you like success. It's like signature or signature of success. That's how you're going to feel when you're on track or when you're moving in the right direction. And also, like, ChatGPT is great. You can just toss all of this into ChatGPT. And once you have your chart and be like, tell me how I'm on track, tell me how I'm off track. So that's really helpful.
Very relevant tip.
Relevant tip.
I mean, listen, we love a ChatGPT, honestly. And then there's also going to be like a signature feeling when you're off track. So like for projectors, as an example, I will feel bitter or resentful when I'm off track. And when I'm doing a reading for someone or when I'm working with someone, it's like, well, we all can feel that, right? And so the question becomes like, how does that work for a projector versus someone else? Every time I tell someone what theirs is, they're like, oh yeah, they know, you know what it is. Like, you know that feeling that it just keeps coming up more often than other feelings. And so you can use that as a guide, and then you can apply that to anything. Like, whoa, I noticed that when I stopped doing this hobby, I started to feel really bitter or like really like, this thing I'm doing for my mom is taking away my time from yoga. And like, that makes me feel really bitter. Misalignment.
It's interesting because it's almost like synonymous with like setting boundaries with people whenever you figure that out. And I feel like that's really helpful, actually.
Totally. And it's actually like, that's such a great point, because that's why I started to use it in therapy, because I was like, wait a second. We could like look at something and get more information for you. And I also find it helps people feel less shame about, setting a boundary or how they're uniquely designed. Like for me, feeling lazy. And so it can be so helpful. There's like so many ways to use this. Yeah.
I mean, it just sounds like you're changing your internal monologue of how you're talking to yourself, and just,
it's prioritizing that self-care. It's another form of it. It's such a great tool. I'm so glad we have you on our show,
this is amazing.
Because it seems like a really good tool to really help you figure out who you are. That can kind of, keeping it in the Hobbies Center, but like to find hobbies that only continue to help fill your bucket and help guide you to being the best version of yourself. Because we're all really good people. We just got to find what makes us feel like us. When you don't feel like you, that's when you kind of feel and act out and feel kind of sad about the world. You want to just be you.
Exactly. And I feel like knowing your design, like for me as a projector, I chose hobbies that give me more like alone time and energy. But knowing that, then when someone's like, oh, well, why don't you, take all of these classes or whatever is more like extroverted. And then I don't have to feel bad about that. I'm like, this is in alignment for me. This helps me return to myself and feel great. And then I can go out and like do the things and be the mom and all of that stuff. So.
It gives you the words. It gives you the verbiage to be able to communicate to those people, because like you said before, if you didn't really have the words, you were like resentful and like
guilty,
and you didn't know how to communicate that. So then you kind of almost acted out, right? But now that you have like the verbiage in there, you can explain yourself, even though you don't necessarily have to, but you can if you need to, where you're coming from in those hobbies.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. This is such a cool way to look at things and look at ourselves. So I love it.
Caitlin,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're so fascinating. I really enjoy like what you've brought to like our audience, because I feel like honestly I'm gonna go chat GPT this out.
Please do. Like I'm also so curious. I want to know by the time you guys come on my show, I want to know like what your energy type are.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Fun homework assignment.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, tell our audience a little bit about like what you're working on and where they can find you.
Yes. Thank you. So I have a gift for your audience too. I created a private podcast that like uses human design and IFS therapy to help people make decisions. And I feel like when we're trying to figure out what hobbies we want to do, how we want to spend our time, we can get like really caught up in that. So I'll give you guys the link, but folks can go and download that for free. It's 5 episodes and it comes into your inbox one every single day. And people have been loving that. So everyone can get that. And then you can find me on the internet, Caitlan Siegenthaler. My name is like really complicated to spell. So definitely click on the link in the show notes.
I appreciate you pronouncing the last name because we were like,
It is. So my husband is Swiss, so it is like a whole enchilada mouthful. Yeah. Sometimes I still will just give my maiden name because I'm like, I don't want to have to spell this for you. I'm just like easy peasy. So yeah, I would love to connect with people. If people have questions, like I genuinely love talking about this and I love empowering people with this information. So please hit me up. Any questions you have. I'm an open book. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we're going to check you out more for sure. And look forward to talking to you more in the future. And thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah. And we'll put all the links. Yeah, we'll put all your links on our show description. So our audience will be able to, they can easily find you. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both so much.
Yes, Caitlan.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Happiness. Be sure to leave a review and rating. And for a little extra Erin and Tam fun, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Pinterest for behind-the-scenes footage of our journey to find happiness.